Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we're going to go over the for loop. In the previous two videos, we went over the while loop and the do while. If you haven't checked those out, feel free to pause the video, go back and check those out. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. And with this, let's get started. So the syntax for the for loop is a little bit different to what we're used to from the while and the do while. So I'm going to go over everything so that you can understand it clearly what each thing does. So don't be afraid of it just by looking at it, okay? So why use the for loop instead of the while or do while loop? So we tend to use the for loop if we know how many times we are trying to execute the block of code. So as you can see, the for loops consist of the for keyword followed by three statements: statement 1, statement 2, and statement 3. And then here's the block of code. So statement 1 is executed one time before the execution of the block. Statement 2 is the condition of whether or not we're going to be executing the block of code. And statement 3 is executed every time after the block has been executed. Let's go ahead and write our first for loop. So we're going to start with the keyword, and then right here is going to be our statement. And we tend to have an integer, and we usually call it I, and we start counting from 0. That's what we programmers typically do. We start counting at 0, not at 1, but at 0. And there's a reason for that, which you're going to be learning about it later with arrays. So we created this variable I, and we initialize it to the value of 0. Now let's write our condition. Say we want to run this loop 5 times. So we do while I is less than 5. And then statement 3, we're just going to increment that I by 1 each time. Now inside this block, we can write something. We can say the value of I is, and let's run it. As you can see, the first time it says the value of I is 0, then 1, 2, 3, and 4. It ran 5 times in total. Let me go over it one more time. So here's a for loop. The first thing it does is initializes I to 0. Then it checks, is I less than 5? Yes, it is the first time, so it's 0. So it just prints this. Once it reaches the end of the block, it increments I by 1. And then it checks again, is I less than 5? In this case will be, is 1 less than 5? Yes, it is, so it's true. Executes the block of code again. Next time it increments 1 until it gets to, until this is 4. And then at the end of this, it gets incremented to 5. And then 5 less than 5, that's false. And then that's when it gets out of the loop. Remember, these are statements. This is statement 1, statement 2, statement 3. So you can change these whichever way you want. So say we can start at 5 and say, well, 5 is greater than, say, 0. You can do I minus minus instead. So it starts at 5. While 5 is greater than 0, it's going to execute this block of code, and then we're going to decrement I by 1 each time. Let's run it and see what happens. Okay, so it printed 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, as we expected. Let's run through an example where we prompt the user to enter a message, and we're going to also ask the user how many times does he or she wants to print that message. Let's do console that write line, enter a message. Actually, I'll do write, and I'll do string message equals to console that read line, and then I'll ask how many times should I display this message. said number. So I'll do an integer times equals to convert that to integer console that read line. Okay, so we have the message. We have how many times the user wants to see that message. So if we do now for int I equals to 0, while I is less than times, then we're just going to increment this. And right here, we're just going to say the message. So let's do console.write line and message. All right, so let's run this. Enter a message. I love for loops. How many times? I want it 5 times. There you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's run one more time. Oops. Okay. And say we do I love for loops, and I do 0 times. And nothing gets printed. Loops do take a little bit of time to wrap your head around them, so make sure you practice, and if you have to rewatch videos, do so. Like always, like this video if you enjoyed it and learned something from it, and subscribe if you haven't done so. I'll catch you guys in the next one.